Hello and welcome to the Bare Bones Friday Show. Meaning I just don't have a whole bunch of preamble and news because it's the day after we hang out on Thursday nights. And we had an awesome hangout on Thursday night, last night, and Aaron Carroll sang to us a couple of songs, and I'm going to play at the end after my conversation with his brother Aaron Carroll, one of those songs from last night. Definitely worth listening to after my interview with Aaron Carroll. I kid John and Aaron Carroll. They are not brothers from another mother, even, but they do have the same last name, so that's just a coincidence. My guest today, the great Dr. Aaron Carroll. He is always an awesome guest. He is the smartest person in the world, at least according to me. That's a kind of an ongoing joke, but he really is one of the smartest people I know and get to talk to. Of course, he is a pediatrician, a professor at Indiana University School of Medicine, where he is also the chief health officer at IU, a associate dean, a distinguished professor of pediatrics. You might know him from his YouTube channel, which is extremely popular, Healthcare Triage. If you haven't checked that out, you absolutely should. Go subscribe to Healthcare Triage. And finally, of course, get his books, The Bad Food Bible, most recently, and his other books are Medical Myths, debunking medical myths about your health and body. So good, all of his work, and I'm always happy to catch up with him. We talked about the, quote, end of COVID, gun violence and mental health, legal issues around the Affordable Care Act, and I also asked him his thoughts on the future with artificial intelligence, which he gave a nuanced and thoughtful answer because he's been giving a lot of thought around that, about that. So there you go. Dr. Aaron Carroll, still on Twitter, at Aaron E. Carroll, though he doesn't do as much anymore. Who does? He's also a contributor to the New York Times, and what else can I say? A very good friend of mine. So let's just get to it. My latest conversation with one of our favorite guests, Dr. Aaron Carroll, and then John Carroll. How about it? There he is. Ladies and gentlemen, good to see you, Aaron. Hi.
How are you?
I am okay, and I'm much better now seeing you. My whole body has filled with warmth.
I appreciate that.
Do you think you have that effect on a lot of people?
I hope. I don't know. Yeah, you know what? I'll say maybe. I think I can be a comforting presence.
You really can be. You are you're such a comforting presence. Do you panic publicly ever, like in front of your family? Do you panic?
No. In fact, it's like I feel like I have this built in, I don't want to say like superpower, but as other people panic, I get calm. I think like it's only when everyone else is calm that I feel free to lose it. Your panic attacks are about other things. Oh, yeah. The one usually, although not as many recently, I got to tell you, drugs work. But it was more, I think like the really last bad panic attack I had was when I like fell down the mountain. But that was like confluence of both my parents having passed away and we were having trouble selling my mother's house. And Jim's chemotherapy was like really not going well. And it just all hit me at the same moment. And work was overwhelming. But that was like I was on vacation with friends who were all relaxed. That's when I can have a panic attack.
And that's when you fell down a mountain. We did a whole conversation about that. It's in the archives, so if people want to check that out.
Good story.
And I did want to talk with you about mental health today, just as it relates to everyone else, and specifically, of course, to leading to violence. You talk to young people at Indiana University. You've got a whole initiative there. You're an expert on this. When you see what is happening in our society and you see the kind of violence that is being committed mostly by young men, do you think there are obvious policies that could and should be resourced, funded, implemented that make a big difference? Is it easy to see that these things would make a difference if we had them in place?
Yeah, I mean, so I want to say yes. Well, there's so many things we could talk about. One is that most of the time we see this in the news, it's because of firearm violence. There's absolutely things we can do about that. The rest of the world has mental health crises, but they don't have gun violence the way they do. At some point, you have to question, why are we the gun violence like this? And it's clearly got to be related to firearms. So yeah, and we've done so many like video series and things on that. Like there are things we could do. And of course, don't catastrophize it. It doesn't mean like taking everyone's guns, but there are things we could do. But if you're asking me about mental health, mental health Yes, like it's one of those things we should absolutely fix it. Yes, there's absolutely things we could do, but our system is so broken and underfunded that money is not the only problem. If we just allocated money tomorrow, it would still be incredibly hard to move the needle because we have a really bad infrastructure. We don't have nearly enough people in the workforce. It would take time to train them. It would take time to get them up. They're not geographically distributed the way we would like. And the infrastructure is so bad that even with money, it would require a huge amount of effort to make things better. So like, this isn't like a quick fix.
I feel like a good example of what you're saying is the Veterans Administration. They have a good money, but they're not laid out. The hospitals aren't, laid out where they need to be. And there's all kinds of issues there. They have money, though.
Even people with resources who are like, I need help, are on like 6-month waiting lists. And that's when they're like massively resourced. There are very few there aren't enough therapists out there. There aren't enough social workers out there. There's not enough, clinicians focused on this out there. So it's not even, it is, I mean, money is always a problem, but it's not just a money problem. It's huge. I think I wrote an editorial, or I co-wrote an editorial in JAMA Pediatrics last year, which I think the title was even like, our mental health system is so broken that not even money can. It's so bad. But I do think, look, mental health is a problem. There's no question. But it's not the quick answer to violence that we see in the news with guns. It's like, that's where mental health is we need to fix that. But come on, guns are also a problem.
And that seems like an understatement. Guns are also a problem. Do you think that a lot of Republicans suggested that we need more God in our lives, and that would do it? What are your thoughts about like a God initiative in schools and in other places?
I don't know why people think that is the solution. I mean, if we look through history, plenty of wars have been fought over God. Lots of people have died over God.
Right.
God is not necessarily a peacemaker in history. The Crusades were not about let's stop killing people. If people find comfort in religion and it creates more ethics and value, great. But I think there's plenty of examples of the opposite being true as well. So I don't think that that's the quick fix to gun violence in America.
What do you think about arming teachers with firearms?
Again, it's like all of these people, like there are armed cops in these schools, where these shootings happen. It's like the idea that, I mean, how many policemen were at Uvalde? It's not as if they were not armed. That doesn't seem to be the solution. Plus, even in some of the most recent school shootings where the police reacted quite quickly and, wound up, either shooting or apprehending or taking down the subject, like the person who's committing the crime, lots of people still got shot and killed. It's like, maybe that may make it resolved faster, although I think the evidence is out on that, but it doesn't prevent.
That's why you need a gun in every room, just like a fire alarm or a sprinkler system or a window to get out for a fire.
I'm amazed at how people think that guns don't require. I'm just baffled why we don't have massive training and licensing. Why gun rights advocates don't double down on the fact that they're well trained, they know how to use them, they should have them, and it should be a high bar to what you need to know and do in order to be given a gun. The idea that we just need to give people guns and then they're really dangerous. Accidents happen all the time. Why? We have cops who are afraid to go in and do this, and all of a sudden we think that kindergarten teachers are going to pull this off, or anyone. It doesn't make sense. I have fired guns, but I don't own one or want to own one because the bar is too high for me. I don't have the time or the inclination to keep my training up or do anything else. And I just know that an accident could happen. I'm not trained for this. That's what keeps me more than the law. It's just
right.
Indiana has very lax gun laws, but I'm not properly trained. Just like you wouldn't want to put me in surgery and have me operate. I'm not properly trained to use that equipment. It baffles me.
Let me talk with you about another issue I want to get to, which is the current state of reproductive rights, women's health care, access to abortion in America in 2023. The latest is this judge down in Texas who overruled the FDA. After 20 years, this pill was out. And he's like, you know what? No more with that pill. It's over for that pill. And he's a real troublemaker, that judge. Anyway, the conservative Fifth Circuit overruled him. A federal appeals court last night ruled that the abortion pill could remain available, but the judges blocked the drug from being sent to patients through the mail and rolled back other steps the government had taken to ease access in recent years. What do you want to say about access to that pill? And I talked with Eric Siegel earlier this week about the legal.
I was going to say, this is much more of a legal problem, I think, like indicative of that. The idea that one federal judge can sort of change national policy and overrule like a whole branch like the FDA. And then have it apply to the entire country, and you have the ability to judge shop is an incredible flaw in the judicial system that needs to be fixed. But part of me wants to believe it's confident, because I actually think this is almost like an overreach, because like I don't think conservatives are thinking through the unintended consequences of like this kind of judicial activism. We usually have safeguards in place so that, one judge shop can't change national law. This could go either way. Like, it's just, I think people who are conservative with a lowercase c, this should freak them out, because this is about as unconservative as you can be with respect to maintaining stability in government. But does it surprise me from the sense of where they're pushing? No. I think that people are, who are, on that sort of pro-life bent are trying to push this as hard as possible. My gut tells me this is going to backfire. What we've seen in Wisconsin and in other states is like, this is not what the country wants. It's being pushed too far, that, you're changing law, but not changing hearts and minds, and hearts and minds are eventually going to snap back.
What do you want to say about the current access to abortion in our country?
This is where I think people who live in blue states don't often get it. How hard it is in some red states, and that it's being pushed further and further, and that and the idea like, oh well, just move or travel or do whatever is incredibly hard, and abortion access is really difficult, and not only that. It's important people understand that most abortions are medication abortions. Surgical abortions are not the norm. And so these attacks on medication abortion are real, because that is how most people, especially in red states where there really are not a lot of abortion providers, if any, because they've been passing laws forever to make it as hard as possible to have a site that will do abortions. It's been medication. And so surgical abortion is often reserved for like further along where there's a real complication in the pregnancy. But most early abortions are medication abortions. So they're really trying to attack that. But, from a medical and legal standpoint, I have not seen many experts on, across the whole spectrum who think that this was a valid decision or like a good decision.
Is there any way to articulate the impact it's had in the states where there is less or little to no access?
Yeah, I mean, yes, in the sense that like maternal mortality is up, and there are lots of
women are dying.
Yeah, then there are lots of stories of women in states that are restricting abortion who've had close calls or bad outcomes because of this, and it puts a chill on providers who are afraid they're going to get sued or lose their license. Not to mention, it absolutely directly impacts lots of women and lots of people who are pregnant. So it's like, it absolutely has an outcome. If it didn't have an outcome, what would be the point? It has an outcome. It absolutely matters. But it's still relatively early, in the sense that this hasn't been for that long, because even though Dobbs was almost a year, I think, but it took a while for a lot of these to take effect. And so, lots of states are still pushing their abortion restrictions in and trying to, restrict it even further. it will take time for the ramifications to happen, but they're real.
Got to ask you about COVID. How closely do you pay attention to emerging variants these days?
You know what? We were just talking about it 10 minutes ago. Like, I mean, my office, we're always talking about this and keeping it up.
What did you think I was going to ask?
Well, I just was like, no. I just was sort of like, I just laughed because like COVID, remember again, I live in a red state. COVID is not like the topic du jour.
Right. Okay.
A lot of this country has decided that's over. So when you were like, let's talk COVID, I was sort of like, okay. To be very honest, our state's not seen a lot of COVID, and we're just not seeing a lot of COVID. We watch this, but the good news is there haven't been any like Omicrons or anything else out there that look incredibly concerning. But absolutely, new variants are popping up. They just don't seem to be causing the massive waves and outbreaks that we've seen in the past.
Oh, well, what about the news yesterday that the president signed a bipartisan congressional resolution to bring the U.S. national emergency's response to COVID-19 to an end? So basically, the shorter headline is Biden ends COVID national emergency after Congress acts. That means a lot of things in terms of resources and funding, I think. It
does, and a lot of the exceptions and easing off of regulations that was in place, but the funding is, of course, the biggest. Look, I wish we had a way to step down as opposed to making it binary, like an on-off switch, but welcome to America. It would be nicer to have an off-ramp where we staged it down. Because look, let's be very honest. This is not like it was 2 years ago or even 1 year ago. It is much, much, much better than it was, but it is not over. And for a lot of people, the risk still exists. And it'd be nice still to have innovations in vaccinations. A nasal vaccine would be great. And so there's lots more we could do. And there's still lots of infrastructure improvements we could make, not only to end this, but to prevent the next pandemic. So it'd be nice to turn it off like a dimmer as opposed to just turning it off. But it's not unreasonable to say we are in a much, much better place than we were.
Last time we talked, I think I said, I asked you your thoughts on the rise of the anti-vax, anti-science movement in the U.S., and you didn't seem to be too concerned that it was going to get, become too impactful. And I don't know. I have no idea.
But I am concerned. I push back on the fact that people think this is new. We've had an anti-vaccine movement as long as we've had vaccines.
Got it.
Way back to smallpox. You could find articles about smallpox vaccine, the polio vaccine, and you could find even doctors who were this is anarchy and terrorism, and why are we doing it? It's always been there. We fought it with autism and the which vaccine? The MMR. We lost it, the MMR and autism. We see it with HPV. I remember when Michelle Bachmann was saying the HPV vaccine was causing massive problems in a presidential debate.
That's right.
This isn't new. It may be because it was a monstrous pandemic that so affected our lives that more people noticed. But I push back on the idea that it's new and therefore it's a crazy thing. Oh my gosh, we got to deal with this because it's new. This has been there for.
Well, the great American Steve Bannon has convinced another great American, RFK Jr., to run for president. Kind of, he's the most noted probably anti-vaxxer. What are your thoughts on that?
Good luck. Yeah, I mean, it's just, sure. I can't imagine that this is going to garner a huge amount of the vote in such a way that's going to help Bannon, who I imagine wants Trump to win again, because who are the anti-vax people who are going to flock to that? I don't think they're going to be coming from President Biden's well of support. I could be wrong, of course, but I just don't see that being a major issue.
What do you want to say about the results of the vaccines, the COVID-19 vaccines, and where we're at in terms of an effort to public awareness campaign to keep people taking them?
Well, one, I'm not actually sure where the evidence is on that we need to keep taking them. The benefit of the last booster may be real, but there's diminishing returns on how much that would be. And, at this point, people who believe in the vaccine, like I got the bivalent booster. But there is nothing on the horizon of like they're recommending we get another one yet. I'm not sure how much good it would do. And it's important to remember that this vaccine primarily was about preventing bad outcomes and death. And that's occurred. And so I'm not sure how much it will do without massive new strains and vaccines coming along for us to keep pushing them. So the reason we do a yearly flu vaccine is because we have an infrastructure in place that tries to boost us against the variant du jour, whatever the
Right.
variant we think it's going to be that year. We are not yet set up to do that. And this is changing so fast. We're always playing catch up. If we ever build the infrastructure and COVID becomes stable enough to sort of say, okay, now we've got the variant of the year, let's get that would make sense to me. But continuing to boost with the original series doesn't appear to do too much in the long, because the antibodies wane. So you get a short-term benefit against potentially getting sick, but the long-term benefit is already there. And what are we at now? Like 60, 70% of the population's vaccinated. That's as good as you get without mandates. It just is. The HPV vaccine is still way lower. Those might be like the numbers we do with flu, even though I think that's slightly higher than flu. Like, this is just what you get. This is why I'm always sort of like, this isn't new. This is what you get without mandates. The reason that we have like 90+% for MMR is because we require all kids to get it for school. It's a mandate.
Right.
And all those kids become adults who are vaccinated. So put a mandate in place nationwide or make it a big thing, we'll get up into the 80s and 90s. Without that, it's not going to happen. We can scream into the wind from now until the end of time. It's not going to happen. Never has, never will. This is why I'm like, we know this. It's been here before. We've had lots of vaccines before this one, and none of them get to high levels that, achieve the levels that we want without mandates. And we appear to be very unwilling to do that.
Measles, mumps, rubella. I am anti-measles and mumps, but pro-rubella. Does that make me...
Good luck with that. I don't think you can get an MM vaccine, so you're just going to have to take the rubella.
Oh, shit. Oh, man.
I don't even know if there's an MM.
I don't even know what rubella is. Okay.
It's one of those diseases, if moms got it while they were pregnant, was really horrific. And it used to be more common. But the fact that you don't know what rubella is because the vaccine's so amazing.
Right. All right. I guess the last thing I want to ask you is non-health related. You're one of the smartest people I know, paying attention to all kinds of different things. You read a lot. All right. Your thoughts on AI. Are we working in 10 years? Are we working in lithium mines for the robots as robot slaves? Is it making our lives better? Are there any jobs left for our children? How much have you paid attention to this?
A lot.
And what are your thoughts, and how sure are you of your thoughts? Because all the people just signed a letter, all the people, and they said, slow down. You got to slow down. We don't know where this is going. And that was scary. What are your thoughts?
So, again, I will say, like, right up front, I'm not an expert. But of course, you could talk to like 4 experts and get 5 opinions.
That's right. That's right.
No one knows. So here's how I think about it. There's a guy named Chuck Friedman. He's sort of like the father of medical informatics. And a lot of my research has been in how do we use information tools to improve the practice of medicine. And he had what he called like the general theory of informatics, which I still think applies to all of this. It was, people think that our goal should be like right now, like, machine is less than person, and that the future would be machine is greater than person. But the real truth is that always machine plus person is better than person. Like, that's our goal. It's not taking the human out of it. It's that us with these kinds of tools are better than us alone. And that is the goal. And that's the truth. And I absolutely believe, that's reasonably short term where we're headed with AI in so many areas. And that like humans will be able to work with these tools in ways that are far better than they could have done by themselves. But I don't see them in the near term replacing. Like, people are still needed for a variety of things. It will change the way that we work. Just like I, with this, am way better than I was without this.
He's holding up, for the record, a giant dildo.
No, it's a smartphone. But I could say the same thing about the computer. I could say the same thing about the internet.
Right.
Like it's like all these things. And I don't think that this is big. And I think this will change many, many things because it will be able to help us with things that we otherwise couldn't do. But I don't see it massively like replacing a ton of jobs, them going completely away. Because, we've been here before in the sense of like people have worried this will replace humans. This will be out of jobs. We do new jobs. We learn new careers. We learn new things. And it's like, and if we get to a world where like everything just becomes easier and we can all have much more leisure time than we used to, oh my God, why are we all so panicked about it? Back in the day, and it wasn't that long ago, the vast majority of humans on Earth spent most of their time thinking about how am I going to get the food to eat. Everyone had to like hunt and gather their own food. And even, when we've developed agriculture, well into like just a couple hundred years ago, huge amounts of productivity were still spent on like, how do we feed ourselves? And then once we figured out how to do commercial agriculture, huge numbers of people didn't have to do that anymore. So they do other things. And I think in my heart, that's what will be in the future. We'll learn we can do other things and those things will be great. But I don't necessarily worry that this is going to be like an instantaneous like world crush. And, when people like worry about, talk about the things and the stuff you see in science fiction and everything else, there's still a lot of humans that would have to be involved in things before we get to the point where like, Skynet's going to take over and murder us all. And so I don't really worry about that too much. I do agree we need to be careful because, of course, tools can be used for bad, as we've seen with lots of other tools in the world, including the internet and including computers. And I do think we could be more careful, and I hope that we will, because these things can also be used for, racism and disparities and lots of other things, which people are noting and trying to fix right now. But I don't worry about, like, we're all going to be out of a job, anarchy on the streets, massive disruptions, world instantaneously. Hopefully it will be gradual over time and we'll learn how to deal with it.
I'm glad to hear that. And I'll mark you down as pro-robot, anti-human. Got it. Okay.
No. Robots with humans are better than humans.
Sorry, everything has to be binary. Pick one or else I won't get ratings. And then I'm going to caption it, like the the thumbnails. Aaron Carroll after the very thoughtful, nuanced response. Aaron Carroll, pro-robot. And then I'll get clicks. And then everything will be better for me. Okay, I'll let you go. What you watching? What you reading? What you, in your case, playing? Are you still gaming?
Oh my God, yes. I finished God of War Ragnarok. Best game of all time.
Okay.
I'm playing the Harry Potter game right now. It's okay. I'm most excited about Star Wars Jedi Survivor, which comes out.
All right. So those are the games. And what you watching? Are you and Amy watching anything together?
I've been watching together Ted Lasso. And I sit and watch her watch like The Bachelor. I can't. She hates me commenting on it, so it's bad. But that's together. Like I'm also watching Mandalorian. I'm watching Picard. I'm taking a long trip soon, and I plan to binge like Better Call Saul, which I've never gotten.
Oh, very cool. I like your diet. Thank you very much, my friend. It's great to see you.
You.
All right, there you go, Dr. Aaron Carroll. How about it? Go say hi to him. Tell him that you appreciate him joining us, as always, on Twitter, or you could probably even email him. Hell, easy to find. That was awesome. Always love talking to him. And before we go, I got a special treat for you because John Carroll gave it to us last night when I begged him to sing to us. Someone requested Neil Young, and it was so good. And I think the audio quality is just fine. From the Zoom last night to stand up at Pete Dominic Happy Hour Hangout, the great Grammy Award-winning singer-songwriter John Carroll, who you've got to go check out his send-up of their own song from years ago, Afternoon Delight. You got to check out the version Antifa Delight, and I'll link to that in the show notes. But somebody requested that he sing Neil Young, and so he sang to us last night, Only Love Can Break Your Heart by Neil Young. Have an awesome weekend. Love you guys. John Carroll, taking us out.
What do you want to hear, Pete?
Neil Young.
Neil Young, all right.
John Carroll or Ridge.
Neil Young.